Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota. And today I'm speaking with two of my senior management team folks. I got Sean Gonsalves, ordinarily up in Massachusetts, chilling down in Florida, who is our editor and researcher and writer and thinker and communicator. And I think that almost gets to all your job titles, Sean.
That's right. That's right. Top of the morning or afternoon. Top of the top.
Right. Yeah. Whatever people are listening to, that's
what time it is.
We're wishing them a good morning or afternoon. Yeah. And we got D. We should, I like to call you D, but I actually feel like we could call you DC. Deanne Cuellar, who is our organizing team lead, I believe. Is that right? I hate titles. What matters to me, like what matters is that you do all the local organizing assistance that we provide and things like that.
That's right. I'm happy to.
So we're going to talk about some different topics in the news, and I thought we would start with one that actually I think the two of you were the least involved in out of all of these topics, and that is the Affordable Connectivity Plan program dashboard. This is something we unveiled. Is it this week? It feels like so long ago. We've been working on it.
No, it was last week.
Okay. Last week you did the press release, so you know. So what is the ACP dashboard, and why are we so excited about a dashboard?
I think we're excited about it because it's one of the hottest things going right now, not just the dashboard, but the program itself. And that's because it helps so many families, so many households.
Like more than 12 or 13 million, I think now. I think that
right.
Chair Rosenworth will just announce that.
Right. And that is for the $30 per month discount, $75 per month if you're a tribal citizen. That subsidy from the federal government that helps pay for internet service subscriptions, and particularly for folks in Indian country, it's a real lifeline, and certainly that's true for a number of households who are enrolled in it, who are getting the $30 a month discount, which for a number of households it makes what was unaffordable at least doable, and so the ACP dashboard, for me, the thing that makes it so interesting is that you can go to the dashboard and find out state by state, zip code by zip code, even at the zip code level, how much is being spent as of right now, how many folks are enrolled, and
most importantly, I assume you're saving this for last.
Yes. See, I was trying to build it up, but most importantly, I think, which is when our predictive map or predictive algorithm or whatever you call it predicts the money will run out, and that's a huge consideration, I think, because it's not that long before the monny will run out, and sure it needs to be reappropriated unless there's going to be millions of folks who are going to be surprised that to see their bill suddenly jump up or worse. Maybe they find that they're kind of stuck with something that they can no longer afford, or there could be perhaps, termination fees associated. Now, certain folks feel like that actually wouldn't happen to folks in terms of, termination fees and things like that. But still, the point remains, when this money runs out, there's going to need to be a reappropriation. And the way things work in terms of appropriating, probably the time is like now to start thinking about how to lobby for that.
Right. Yeah. Probably right after the election. Thinking about it now to do it right after the election, probably.
Absolutely.
So I always want to come back to something because you said our algorithm, and it's definitely the work of a few people in the team to make this ACP dashboard. Christine does a lot of our GIS and data crunching, and Christine worked with Rye and Emma on this whole project to make it happen. I mean, I don't know that we could pick a single person without which we couldn't have done it. Like, there's just a lot of really great contributions, but the dashboard is elegant. It is attractive. The predictive model that Christine worked out has different ability to assume different amounts of people enrolling, because we don't expect 100% of people to be enrolled in ACP, and how many people enroll at what speed changes how fast it will run out of money. So that's all there and predicted. And there's it's updated regularly whenever new information comes out. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on it. And I'm curious, Deanne, if you have any thoughts about this. I mean, I know you have a lot of thoughts about the ACP, but this is a great time to jump in and share them.
I had this like vision in my head when the research team was working on this project. Like if you watch Wild Wild Westerns Westerns, like from the Wild Wild West, and there's like the cowboys going out to have a fight and coming back, that they lost or won, which means like I felt like we won when the research team was able to go live with this dashboard because it's such a huge advocacy tool. And
it's so pretty. And that was for me, that was one of the things I kept harping on, is that they were doing really great work and getting the numbers together. And I'm kind of like, but can we make it prettier? Like, and Emma really stepped up for that. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I like you hear on TV, like show me the money. When you do advocacy work, it's like show me the numbers. And so the ACP dashboard was great because like if you're able to go on there and click on it, you can click on your region, the region you're competing with, and you've got data that you can visualize and numbers to have a conversation about the pros and cons of this program.
Yeah. So acpdashboard.com is a place to go to learn more about that.
And maybe we don't want to reveal it here, and maybe folks should see it at the dashboard, but we actually didn't say when the model predicts the money will run out.
Yeah, it's but like you said, it's sooner than expected. I think many of us, and Rye takes this very seriously, as an academic futurian historian.
That's right.
Futurian and historian, and we're expecting, with different changes coming about, basically 2 years from now, right? Yes. It'll be in 2024, we're pretty sure, but likely kind of late summer, fall, likely, we think.
Right.
So this is, I think, something we're going to continue looking at. We do not think ACP is a great long-term solution. Like, let's just be clear about this, right? Like, we want to track the numbers. And I feel like with a lot of this stuff, you can find the information if you know where to look. And generally it's in Excel tables and things like that. But we wanted to try and make it accessible for people. But we think ACP is important to make things more affordable in the broken marketplace we have. But I just want to note that we are not seeing very many steps to fix the marketplace. And so like, it's really important we put more money in the ACP because nothing is going to change in the next 2 years to make things more affordable. Everything we're seeing is that the prices are going to keep going up and probably up faster, with what's going on. And I should say that I actually think that could be a very local phenomenon. I mean, there's stories about how Colorado Springs and several other places are getting a lot of fiber investment right now. And locally, we may see a number of places that it becomes more affordable. And this wasn't on our rundown to think about it all, but I don't know. Deanne, I know you saw it closely, and Sean, I think you paid a little bit of attention, but that report coming out of Los Angeles showing that prices were lower where people have more money, where there's competition, and the same services or much slower services are more costly in areas, neighborhoods that have lower incomes. That is what I would expect to see more of in the future, is that the competition may be working, but it'll be working among people that have the most disposable income. I think the Biden administration talked a good game. Congress, we have some great folks in Congress who tried to make structural changes, but there was enough people owned by the cable and telephone company that it didn't really happen.
It is unfortunate, but that is the going to your point about ACP being this important program, because it's sort of the quickest way to get people connected that can't afford internet service. But of course, the infrastructure has to be there, or the service needs to be there. But it is a short-term solution insofar as this is a symptom of a broken market where you've got, monopoly interests prevailing. When you've got, a monopoly controlling the market, you would expect that things will be not very affordable for most folks, particularly folks that are really financially strapped.
Yeah. And so that's where we can dive into FAR Texas, where they're doing something about it that's really interesting. When I was interviewing folks in FAR who are building a municipal broadband network at one of the fastest paces we've ever seen, at the most affordable rate that we might have seen ever since Lafayette launched with a $20 a month tier in Louisiana. This is a $25 a month tier for 500 megabits symmetrical, crazy affordable speeds in one of the least connected cities. in a city that I thought of as being very close to Deanne in San Antonio. But it turns out that Texas sure is big. And that little lump that pokes out the furthest south is very big and long too. So far is what, 3.5 hours away from you at 80 miles an hour, Deanne?
Yeah, it's far.
Yeah, it's far.
That is far. So you're, I think you took some interest in this, and we're about to publish a story about it to go with the podcast we just released on it. But Deanne, what are things that jump out to you about FAR Texas?
The number one thing that jumps up to me about the city of FAR is their willingness to try to do something different. Like you said, the speeds and the rate and the collective community coming together for a solution. I think that's what sticks out to me the most.
Yeah. And when you say that, I think it's worth highlighting something that, Sean, when you're talking to some of the folks in Massachusetts and elsewhere, what's one of the things we were just talking about that they were saying about why, like our city couldn't do it, this.
Right. Which is because there isn't a municipal utility or, already existing. So
a municipal electric utility.
There are folks that think that if you don't have a municipal electric utility that already exists, cities can't do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so enter FAR, Texas, and also Fairlawn, Ohio is another one we often talk about. There are cities that are showing that with a good plan and the right partners, you can make it work. And not just that, but I mean, dang, I still, the podcast, I recommend people listen to it. I feel like I want to go back and listen to it again because I'm still trying to figure out how they're going to pull off a sustainable $25 a month, half a gig package, which is based on them, I think, serving nearly everyone. But
right. I think 65% is the take rate that they're shooting for to make all of that work. Although, considering the connectivity there, they probably have a good shot at reaching that, that kind of take rate.
Well, that's where I think it's interesting. And Deanne, you know a lot more about South Texas than Sean or I, obviously, but a city of 70,000 that doesn't have a decent cable option is kind of surprising, just generally for a population of that size.
It's a huge population in my mind, for a city that's not a municipality, here in Texas, and where those cities are located along the border. I mean, the whole state is like that. It has a purpose. So I think that what you have down there is not only this idea of willing to try something new, but the leadership is also quite unique, right? You have a mayor who's in a position of leadership that happens to also be a medical professional who's been working closely with stakeholders for his entire career. And so I think that this mayor is probably working closely with his city staff to think about all the possibilities for a solution. And what we've got is FAR.
And I think they credit National Digital Inclusion Alliance with pointing out that FAR was one of the worst connected cities as providing a motivation for them to make that a priority to fix they have multiple priorities. They have a lot of challenges they're dealing with, but this is a case of city politics working right. It looks like, where the city identified a key issue that it wanted to work on. It's seized federal dollars that are available to it, and it's also we're trying to dig into the financing more to better explain it. But
right.
But that's where I think we complain a lot when things go wrong, but this looks like things going pretty right.
It looks that way. One of the things with I think the estimated price tag for the network construction there is $40 million, which to me seems like a pretty low number for a city of this size. But I don't know far the way Deanne and others do. Maybe there's a lot of multi-dwelling units in the city, and where they're able to pass many more premises than other cities are with a little bit less of an investment.
When you raise that, I pointed out, I think Longmont, which is a little bit bigger and had some pre-existing assets, I think they built in that similar neighborhood of cost, fiber out to everywhere. But it did take them 4 years, and FAR's looking to do it in less than 2. So,
right.
It's really impressive. It's a low number. It's not so low that I would think it's impossible.
Yeah.
So with that, I feel like it's worth jumping over to Syracuse, which none of us know anything about. So why not talk about it on a podcast? But I just wanted to point out, it jumped up, and between FAR and Syracuse, it's a reminder that, again, we live in a system in which sometimes people get really, I feel like they get really cynical, and they sort of feel like we can't do anything to change anything. Well, people in Congress made the American Rescue Plan in order to provide flexible money to cities to make sure they could put it toward broadband infrastructure. That passed. The White House, initially launched some rules that looked like they were kind of etched in stone. We didn't think that they would change. They were pretty restrictive on how cities could use it. And cities like Syracuse and maybe FAR might have had to jump through more hoops to use this money. But after a coalition of cities working with the National League of Cities and us and others, worked with the White House, they relaxed those rules, and now we're seeing cities making really interesting investments. And so Syracuse is moving forward now with a plan to build publicly owned infrastructure for low income folks. And I think this is what I want to talk about: is Syracuse is doing it, but I think this is what we believe is going to be happening more and more in a lot of bigger cities. Not that they're going to come out with a plan to build everywhere like FAR is, but that they're going to say, we have some money, we're going to target an investment, and if we make it work well, we're going to expand. We're going to build on that. And that, I think, is the smartest thing a bigger city can do.
You're right. I think what's happening in Syracuse is that they're putting out, an RFP to move forward with this pilot program that you're talking about, which is building out connectivity to households in the city that don't have access to high speed.
I think it's like 2,500 in a given area. Like it's a fairly small number, but it's 2,500 folks that need a solution.
And they also want to enhance I think their existing municipal network for the city in terms of smart city applications and things of that nature. So
right, because I think they haven't done this in the past, right? Sorry, I've cut you off like 8 times now, so I should let you finish one thought.
No, that's okay. My thoughts come in chunks. And one thought that occurred to me too is that I know that, for example, Cambridge in Massachusetts is another city that's been, kind of kicking the tires on a municipal network and there's some momentum there to push forward there now. They're getting, they're now doing a serious feasibility study and are looking at that. But Cambridge happens to be a city that has a lot of cash reserves on hand. So if they really wanted to build a citywide municipal network, they could without having to think about raising taxes or anything like that. Looking at Syracuse may be something that, a city like Cambridge may want to do, because they may want to focus, have a more targeted approach in terms of creating a more limited network that reaches the folks in a city like Cambridge that don't have access to broadband.
Right. And in Cambridge in particular, it's really useful that city manager that was, I think it was the tire that kept kicking back, he's gone now. And so they can actually move ahead because they've had a lot of political support for getting serious about making some investments. And I feel like, we've seen this from too many people who they're too scared by this. They don't want to do it. They'll talk about how broadband's super important, but they won't actually take steps to like fix the problem. And I think we should see more cities that are holding their elected officials and appointed officials at the highest levels accountable if they're not taking action to resolve these issues. So that in the conference, that conversation, I just remembered that we had a different piece of the ACP to talk about that I just barreled right over as we moved too far too quickly. That's what a recent exciting development regarding recruitment for ACP. And Deanne, you've been following this closely. What's going on with the ability to pull more people into ACP?
Well, when the ACP program, really hit the mainstream, 2 things that popped up was, one, that it was difficult to enroll, and 2, that there was no funding allocated for people on the ground that would end up assisting people with enrollment. So that has since changed, as we predicted and expected. So now there's $100 million that has been set aside for funding governments and nonprofits to assist people to enroll by household. The application is not available yet, and nor are the rules that are going to govern the grant making process. But it's good. It's not too late, but of course it was something that could have been probably helpful early on. But it's here now. And
I think the thing is that we still don't really have a good sense of what is really going on with ACP. We have a suspicion that the ACP signups have mostly been from companies that have a history of working in low-income neighborhoods and have a whole path and like a whole like system worked out for getting people signed up for these sorts of things. And so I think it was envisioned that ACP would help bring new families to connect to the internet, but it seems that it's more the people who have gotten signed up or people that happen to be in areas where there are people that have either commercial interests or like community obligation interests to try to connect people. So for instance, if you look at the maps, like several reservations have very high numbers of signups because they've had a real motivation to sign up people that are living on the reservation to get the $75 a month to actually build out a network in many cases that would work. And in other cases, we see that 60% of the people signed up are using it for mobile services. And we suspect that that's the companies who are using the mobile lifeline. They're using that same infrastructure. And I think that's not really what we envisioned, right? Like we really wanted this to be more about people getting a high quality connection in the home, kids being able to do homework as opposed to subsidizing a mobile wireless plan, which is important for people. That's the best they can do. But, I think we're hoping that this plan will help move people to a more sustainable connection. Although, as we said earlier, there's not a more affordable connection on the way for most people, unless you happen to live in Syracuse or far Texas.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was the other tool or talking point that came out of the dashboard that Sean and I were looking at. We were for a period stuck on the top 10 and like the lowest enrollment, cities, but that changes day by day. And we right off the bat thought like, wow, people are going to look at that and say like, my city's doing great. Look at that. We're in the top 10. And if you really zoom in, it means like your city's doing great because the need is so big. Enrollment is high. So, it's a double-edged sword. It actually points to lack of competition, lack of affordability, which means there's probably other issues going on. But I wanted to point out something related to competition and affordability. Back to Los Angeles, where where we found out about the neighborhoods having different costs. They've been surveying the community, and they were somewhere around 1,000 surveys, but that community going out there and asking households to share their rates has now blossomed across the state. So now Los Angeles has collected close to 2,000 survey results about people throughout the state of California that are reporting, the disparities and what they're paying and what they're getting.
Excellent. What's the umbrella group that's doing that work?
It's the Coalition of Digital Equity stakeholders and organizations working in Los Angeles County.
I feel like this conversation has been too positive. So the flip side of what you were just talking about on the ACP dashboard in the top cities, I think is, I found it interesting that Minneapolis was one of the worst cities in terms of sign up among the cities that were surveyed. And that came right after Minneapolis had gotten a trailblazer, I forget what the term is, notification award or acknowledgement from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. And it looks to me like, I feel like Minneapolis is one of these cities where we have elected officials who are good at checking boxes and pretending like they care about things, but then ultimately not actually making structural changes. And that's what we've seen. I don't see a lot of folks in Minneapolis for the city really trying to fix these problems. I see them pointing fingers and hoping that Comcast is going to solve the problem. And it didn't surprise me that Minneapolis showed up so poorly in the rankings. And it did surprise me that they were seen as a trailblazer. But I feel like this is something that people, I think, need to look closely at their local governments and say, hey, are we just engaging in box checking or are we actually moving the needle here? I feel like you have a response to that, Dean. You can tell me I'm wrong, but I'm just curious how you think about that, because you've been working in these cities and you've seen that tension.
Yeah, I think there's more to do than checking off boxes. That's the point that I would make. And the other talking point that goes along with that is like, if the community cannot see progress and you can't track towards success for closing the digital divide, you're just checking boxes.
So this is where we'll pivot quickly, and then we're going to wrap up to two plans that I think are interesting. Boulder, Colorado is nearly completing their broadband plan, which is not, I think, the final plan they have, but is the step of building municipal fiber throughout the town to connect anchor institutions and things like that. And Erie, which is the county that Buffalo is in New York, has recently revised that plan. And Emma may have published a story on this. I know Emma's working on it, and so like if it isn't published yet, it'll be up soon by the time this podcast is up. And it's interesting. I think something that we will see is more of these cities that are focused on that, building out infrastructure, and I think there's a good place for that. But I also think that if you think building, just down arterial streets is going to solve this problem, then you're going to be unhappy in a few years because it may help some providers get to some places. And I mean, I'll say that like companies like Ting are pretty good about taking these networks and building out to everyone from what I've seen. Other companies may also be doing that. They might be doing it more aggressively in some cases. And still other companies will look at that and say, hey, I can get to that wealthy neighborhood or that, that strong middle-class neighborhood that's going to hit that, 40-50% take rate. And I'm going to go there. And then I'm going to go to a different town and I'm going to go to those neighborhoods there. This is kind of the MetroNet model. Like, hey, what if we just left behind a lot of the people that are harder to serve? And so I'm worried about those sorts of approaches, but I think it's smart. And I'm curious, I want to get a reaction from both of you about this, because I've candidly made the case to cities that I don't think are ready to build a network to the home, like in St. Paul. My own city, I feel like if the city was to announce tomorrow that they were going to build a municipal fiber to the home network, I would be gravely concerned about their ability to execute that. But I have said that, like it would be smart for them to have assets throughout the city where, and the term that I use is if they wanted to project bandwidth into neighborhoods in the event of a pandemic or things like that, they would be able to do that without having to beg Comcast or someone else to mess around. And I think it's smart to do that as an interim step, but I think we need to be realistic about how far that will take us.
Yeah, I think that's you're always much more practical in thinking about these things.
But see, Sean, you have like decades of covering local government, and so I feel like you have a better sense of like how things work and the politics and like just like a reality that like I'm always curious how you react to things like that when I'm like, this is the way a city could do it. Like, if you have a strong reaction.
No, I actually don't have a strong reaction to that, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's practical because I think kind of the way that you're laying out is actually probably less likely to bump into some of the politics that can really jack a project up that's more ambitious.
Right. But no city council, the reason it doesn't happen more is no city council member gets to become mayor by saying, I built a network that nobody sees and nobody uses, really.
Right. Exactly. And this stuff also often takes longer than an election cycle. I've never ran for office, but I suppose it may be tough campaigning on something that you can't really say, elect me for the next like 3 or 4 terms in a row so I can see this thing through.
Right. And Deanne, I feel like, you're in one of these cities that has that access and has generally refused to take advantage of it. I mean, in this case, you have a municipal electric that has the asset and they're kind of independent from the city, but.
Yeah, we have municipal fiber in the city of San Antonio, and we have people who have ran on doing things with the fiber, and we have people in office that make closing digital divide and community broadband infrastructure one of their main issues. It's not an easy topic to advocate and ask people to vote for you on. You're right, Sean. Like it takes a while, but I think that we've got some new people that are in office and that are running for office that are going to make this their issue based on the resiliency of their city. Like now it's not only is it front and center for like older adults and kids, but now it's like infrastructure, pandemic, we need the internet. It's still moving pretty slowly, but at least it's more mainstream and it's now more popular knowledge.
Yeah, I think that word resilience, it means something more to me now in part. I have a close friend who is not in the path of, but is in the vicinity of the Fairview fire in California that's already claimed multiple lives. And, I can't say that I'm a very close television news watcher, but I was talking to someone yesterday and I was just saying, I feel like we've gone from, oh my God, there's a massive fire in California to, oh my God, there's always fires in California to people are dying in Californian fires and it's not even a big story anymore. And I mean, people are dying in some cases, not in this case, but sometimes in their homes because they can't get warned fast enough. And I mean, that's where we need telecommunications that will work, among other things to make sure that people have the warnings that they need. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. I remember, not to turn this into a climate change podcast, but I mean, I remember 20 years ago, people were sort of laughing, oh, ha, 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 like Minnesota will be nicer now that we'll have climate change. And like, we're starting to see the effects and they're going to get worse. And we need to take emergency communications seriously. On that note, that's
So we went from like super positive to like, let's give you some really bad news.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we could say is that there are definitely highs and lows, and like anything else, like I feel like Sean's always ready to tell us what's going wrong, but Sean's also kind of on vacation. And so like you're looking at what's happening, what's happy out there.
Exactly. Life looks different when you're chilling. And we didn't even talk about what's going on in Louisiana in East Carroll Parish.
Yeah, boy, I'm looking forward to seeing how that gets resolved. We have to keep digging in to get more details on that and the other challenges. That's something that we are working on behind the scenes. And if anyone has information about where incumbent providers are abusing the challenge process for state grants or other kinds of grants, please reach out to us. We know that, Nick Coates and Peggy Schaefer in New Hampshire and Maine, respectively, but we need to get more information about this, because this is awful, and we need to make sure that that we're going to do something about it. So we're going to turn that negative story into a positive one, because I think we're going to see a lot of states enacting better rules to make sure that we don't have this kind of crap.
Right. That's what I think will be the silver lining of that kind of information, so that states realize that we need to have rules in place that have a little bit of teeth that discourage existing providers from making fraudulent claims about areas that they serve, and thereby delaying projects for years or and getting into the courts, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, the folks that were being targeted for better service, better broadband are waiting and waiting and waiting.
Right. So for people who need more energy to organize, hopefully that'll help you. And we appreciate you tuning in, listening. And thanks, Sean and Deanne, for taking some time to do the recording. And we'll see you all in the near future.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.